Okay, I've started the recording so I don't forget, which I did last time. So it's 4:01. Let me call this meeting to order. Gail, are there any board absences in the consent agenda?
No, I sent you an email that everyone should be here.
Okay, and Maria just showed up. So that's good. I think the only person who has not yet here is Tim. Yeah. Okay. So in terms of consent agenda, the only thing on the consent agenda is the approval of the November minutes. Does someone want to move that?
So moved.
That was
Second.
Ed. Who is the second? Babette?
Lenore.
Oh, Lenore,
Present.
thank you. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Thank you. Any opposed among the
Nope.
board? Any abstentions? Then that passes. Thank you. We have a number of pre-reads. We also have what will have to be an oral report from Christian because I believe it came late. So Christian, do you want to just brief us on your report?
Yeah, sure. I sent out the report a little bit late. I'm sorry about that, folks. We had a big meeting yesterday at Beecham of elected officials. We had 3 state senators and 3 assembly people there. They're on a listening tour across the state for libraries. So we had a couple of our member library directors there. Jen was there from Manlius, Mandy was there. Glenna was there from Liverpool. Mark from CLRC was able to be there. It was a really rich conversation. It was an hour or so. One of the main things that we're kind of focusing on or trying to get people to focus on is the idea of using some of these federal one-time windfall grants or windfall monies to flip that to capital so that we can do some infrastructure improvements. And that was a big part of the conversation. Other than that, a lot of my month has been spent doing the prep work for challenges, which we will discuss. Yeah, sorry, Ed, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off. I was going off my list. What's up?
No, I just wanted to know if you could identify the representatives that were there.
Oh, I knew you were going to ask me
elected-
that. Yeah, I knew you were going to ask me that, Ed. I know that Senator May was there. He's the
I
head
think
of the
Ryan?
library. Yep, Ryan
John
was
Ryan.
there. I can get you that list.
How about
It was-
Mannion? Was John Mannion there?
I believe so,
So,
yeah.
Pam Hunter?
Wait a second. So wait a second, Ed. So we talked about this earlier before everyone came on, and I think Meg or Mandy probably can give us a quick list.
Oh, great. Okay, thank
It
you.
was Pamela Hunter, Mannion. It was Senator Ryan, Kimberly Jean-Pierre. She's the chair of the committee. And who am I forgetting? Mannion.
Rachel
Ryan.
May.
Oh, Rachel May. I think I got everybody on that one.
That's a great name. Jean-Pierre?
It's Kimberly
Oh,
Jean-Pierre.
Kimberly Jean-Pierre. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. All right. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah,
Christian.
no problem, Ed. It was a good conversation, a pretty rich conversation. Folks were very interested in the expansion of mission. Copyrights came up, Jill, so that came up. The copyright for ebooks issue came up and being more, fiscally accessible there. Some of the issues around, we pay for an ebook, we only get to circuit a couple of times before it goes extinct. That kind of stuff came up.
Which by the way is not copyright, but what they've been doing is really looking at kind of I'll put in quotation marks contract law
Sure.
as a way of going for equity with ebooks.
And then, I did some work with the Literacy Coalition, who are in the process of kind of doing some revitalization and just continuing to work on our organizational change stuff. And I'm happy to talk about any of that if anybody would like, but I know we have a lot of stuff on our agenda, so I don't want to take up too much time.
Well, may I just add that if we get the list, maybe I think it would be wise, maybe as a board, maybe to follow up with a letter or something in support of
Sure.
what was said. And just reinforce what we're trying to do maybe. And okay, sorry.
Sure.
Keith.
Sure. Hopefully Gail has captured that list in the minutes, and we can use that later for gain some more information to our legislators.
And I'm
Yeah.
happy to recreate, send that out to the board easily enough,
Yeah.
Joe. It's something, it was just yesterday at the end of the day.
So can you talk about the Literacy Coalition and what that group is and what the library's role is with them?
It's a very loose coalition. It's a very loose confederacy. It's not really, and that was one of the things that we were kind of looking at, is what is the actual structure of the Literacy Coalition. It's not an NFP. It's not actually an established C3 at all. And where do we kind of fit in there? And so there's a lot of partners. There's a lot of people who are working within that. We're not on the managing committee, as it were. So we're kind of one of many. There's been a conversation about having a coalition out of Cortland come and run the Literacy Coalition. At first, I was not happy about the idea, because I felt that keeping those resources in the county were more important. But as I began to look at it more and kind of realize where the structures were, there really is not much of a structure for the Literacy Coalition. So it would be very difficult to bring somebody in, because there's just frankly very little actual structure. It is a distribution network for some funds and some resources, but it works to distribute funds and resources to agencies which are already pre-existent C3s in their own right. So in that way, it's kind of a pass through. It'll be really interesting to see what the Cortland County Coalition comes up with. I think they'll end up running it better. And I think that we're in a good position to do some work with literacy. There's a lot of groups that are involved in this. So it would be good to have kind of a central point of conversation, which hopefully the Cortland group will be able to provide.
What
Is
is the
this the
library
managing
done?
part? Sorry.
What has the library done in the past with the coalition?
Well, that's the thing, is not much. I mean, we have somebody who goes there. We're part of the conversations. We discuss largely adult literacy, is a large part of our conversation in that. We're certainly happy to spend coalition money. And I've attended some of the meetings. I think I attended one before the shutdown. So, I mean, it's a very loosely affiliated group. We're probably one of the bigger players in the group, but there are some folks who are also, economic development folks who are involved, and it's a good environment for us to be working in. We're not getting a huge amount out of it, and we're not a huge player in it, but it is kind of interesting that it's in a process of kind of restructuring right now, and we've been a part of that.
Jill? It's been around a
Yeah,
long time. I was part of the Literacy Coalition Managing Partners when it started up, but I think the biggest thing that they did was to raise money for the Imagination Library, which is Dolly Parton's thing, which was giving books from kids from birth every 6 months until like age 5 or 6. But it seems to have sort of been idling lately, you might say. And I think probably the library can do more for it than it can do for the library.
Yeah.
But we'll have to see what direction they're going to go in.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. And it has been very much been about the Imagination Library, which is a great program, and I'm certainly a fan of it. I do think that you're right. I think that the library brings a little bit more to the table than we get out of it. My hope is that as the conversation goes forward, I've offered to help with some new structuring stuff. So hopefully we'll be able to be involved in it as it kind of reforms itself.
Thank you. Any other questions for Christian? I'm waiting because sometimes it takes a moment for people to get unmuted. Okay. Christian, thank you. In terms of my report, which you have, I don't know if there's any questions for me. I will point out 2 things. One is I've included text about board members being liaison to the city libraries, and the fact that we really need to think about that in terms of what the liaison role is that we do with our member libraries. And so that's in my report. And the other thing on the second page are just a list of things I think we need to attend to in 2022. Some of them are easy, some of them will take more work, but there's a number of things as a board that we need to pay attention to. And so that's also in my report. Not hearing any questions or comments. Hopefully that's a good thing. I know that there's no reports this month from Mandy Travis or from Alyssa Ali. I know that Kim is here. Kim, I don't know if you have anything from Focal.
Nothing to report this month.
Okay, okay, thank you. And then there's a host of other reports this month. And so I'd like to, I'll name them and ask for questions. The first one would be the budget report. This is the end of the year, close to the end of the year in terms of budget. And I don't know if there are questions that board members have about the 2021 budget. Ed?
It's just, sorry.
More a comment, if you look at it and you look at the unencumbered amount, available funds, I mean, the biggest chunk of that, or a huge chunk of that, is stuff that will happen probably this month that gets done by the Office of Management and Budget. They're interdepartmental charge type things and fringe benefits and all that. So we don't have much say in it. They're going to charge whatever what they estimate to be the actual cost. So it looks like we have lots of idle funds that we could be spending, but we really don't. There's only some maybe in the personnel line, but it's late in the year. It's not going to be much we can do except fill some of the positions that are in the works.
Sam?
I guess just quickly, I mean, beyond just reading through the budget itself, this year is a little bit more calm than last year, but the budget generally, I think, relative to just openness of libraries and staffing and everything, I guess, are there any comments just on sort of how we are doing broadly versus the budget? What are we looking at for next year? And are there things, I know budget time is way off, but just things to be thoughtful about as we continue talking about strategic plan and all those things going forward that we should be thinking about as we go through the rest of this year and then prepare for next year as well.
So perhaps what lessons did we learn this year that we can apply next year?
Yeah, and I mean, I know that it's weird given COVID and everything, but what can we get out of it, and what should we be taking forward and looking for?
So Christian, or I don't know if Mark's here. Christian or Mark?
Sam, I'm not sure that I understand where the question was. I mean, I'm happy to discuss it. We're doing pretty well. I mean, we're getting back to staffing. There's still a couple of gaps that are lacking, some C-suite stuff. I mean, we need our programming librarian that we've been waiting on a new list for. We need to bump up our communications team. That's going to be pretty important. An expenditure that I can see us doing more of is, there is this conversation around these pop-up libraries, which I'd be very interested in, or pop-up library unit, which I'd be very interested in discussing. That's going to be kind of a capital unit. I mean, there's some things going that way, but I'm not seeing anything huge on the scene, and I'm not hearing anything that would indicate that we're looking at the same kinds of cuts that we saw last year. So, I'm kind of seeing that we're doing okay. We're looking at going forward pretty solid, and we're back to a healthy staffing. I mean, there's still some gaps. Like I say, the communications team, we need to get somebody working the maker space here at Central. There's still a couple of little dribs and drabs, but nothing that I would consider, onerous or particularly outstanding. But I'd love to have your input as we keep going forward and where you see the budget going. And I think you're on the finance committee. So, if you see stuff that you think that we should be concerned about, I'd love to get your feedback on it. I don't know if that answers the question, and if it doesn't, I'm not sure. I'm not trying to obfuscate, but I'm just not quite sure what, I mean, from where I'm sitting, we're doing pretty well. We're doing better than we were last year, and that's making me pretty happy. I'm not seeing huge things coming on the horizon. There's some issues of book distribution that we're going to have to worry about, but Katie's been sweating that down for a couple of months now already, so we'll see some slowdown on that. You know, my main thing is, how do I take all of this federal one-time COVID money and invest it in us? And for me, that's infrastructure. For me, that's, you know, long-term capital stuff. Poor Ed had to hear me tell the same story repeatedly, which is, you know, I was out at the Hazard Library and somebody commented that the furniture looked a little dated, and I flipped over one of these chairs and it had been supporting our community since 1966. I know that Meg's in the room. I checked out a book from Meg's library for my daughter that's been in circulation continuously since 56. So if you can just give us a little bit of money, we'll really make it work well. And that's my through line right now is, you know, let's get staffed, let's get moving, let's get the libraries staffed and populated and people doing service. But if I can rake some money into, you know, into accounts to do some building and some stuff that'll last for us for, you know, another decade or 2 decades, that's very much where I have my eye right now. That's what I'm looking at for the budget going forward.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think the main thing is we had a pretty challenging year last year for a variety of
Oh, yeah.
reasons, including to the budget and the staff. And so then sort of replacing budget is not always easy, just to suddenly like start spending again and have hiccups. And then additionally rehiring, you know, saying, hey, life is different than what it was prior to COVID, you know, does that, a lot of it is sort of a work in progress, but to your point, saying, hey, there are capital needs, there are these things. Yeah, I mean, I think we don't often go into a deep dive on the budget during these meetings. And so I think it's just a use of hey, we're at the end of the year. And so let's just make sure that everybody's feeling good about where things are and that we have a good amount of idea around where we want to spend money and where we need more money to, you know, kind of implement the plans that we have going forward. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. Sure, of course.
I have a question, Jill. Oh, I'm sorry.
Sure, Babette.
So, Kristen, do you anticipate any issues around hiring? You know, because I'm hearing that every industry, every sector is having difficulties. And I just want to say too that obfuscate is my father's favorite word.
Oh,
So-
good. Okay, excellent. No, you know, I mean, we're having some issues. Okay, we're having some stuff where folks are coming in, you know, maybe the job isn't quite what they were looking at, where before we might have said, hey, we want you to work at this branch. They say, no, I don't want that branch, so I don't want that job. We've had some of that. Typically it's in the para level, so like shelvers and that kind of stuff. Being a clerk is a pretty real gig here. You get benefits. It's a pretty real job. So we don't have as much of a problem, not a problem. We don't have as much kind of drop off on the clerk level stuff. And then, you know, the deal with the librarians, I mean, an MLS is an MLS is an MLS. There's a lot more people who have the degree than have jobs. So we're still able to recruit talent, you know, at the professional level pretty easily. We have I'm really interested in seeing what happens when we have our Lib2 list, which is Librarian 2 list, which is coming down from civil service, which hopefully will be an opportunity to see, you know, where we might be able to bring in some fresh blood from outside of the organization, but then also be able to move some people up within the organization. But, you know, I mean, yeah, for some of the, you know, for take a book off a cart, put it on the shelf, we've had a little bit of a, you know, I wouldn't say problems, but it hasn't been necessarily a super smooth hiring process. For folks at the librarian level, you know, you really kind of need your first gig. I mean, Jill, I think you'll support me on this. You know, getting your first job in libraries is a pretty big deal. So we're not having any difficulty recruiting folks for that, you know, for those jobs. The fact that we have the iSchool, the fact that the iSchool is the caliber of institution that it is and is turning out some really high quality library professionals right out of the gate is really helpful for us.
So I have 3 questions about the budget. One probably isn't our budget. It might be elsewhere in the county, but I know that we're supposed to get a personnel person in the library, and I wonder if that's happened.
It has not happened as yet, but I mean, I'm still working on it. And we're still trying to get somebody out of that office to be assigned directly to us. It'll make a huge difference for our work, particularly for like Dawn. Dawn has been carrying a lot of that stuff. Gail ends up carrying a lot of that stuff. So it is still very much in play. It's something that Brian Donnelly really would like to have happen. And given the size and complexity of our organization, I think it's really necessary.
Yeah. What's the holdup?
Jill, I think it was a 2022 budget item.
Yeah, and the budget.
Oh, I
started
had
yet.
heard that they were going to try to put a person over sooner than that. So, okay. And for our newer board members, if there are unspent funds at the end of the year, what happens to those unspent funds?
They go into they get raked back in by the county. And Ed, I'm sorry, what's the term that I'm reaching for?
Unbalanced.
The fund balance, that's it.
Yeah,
The fund
they
balance gets raked
typically
back.
have appropriated it, would allow, which is a little disturbing because it's nice to have a little cushion, but
So they go back to that goes back to the county for the
They
county
typically
use.
they apply them basically to the budget to reduce the amount of, let's say, tax appropriation.
Okay. And then I noticed in the grants area that some of the grants show, like 120% collected.
Mhm.
And so how do you collect more on a grant than what was given to us?
I'm not sure what the notation is on that. I know that Mark is in the process of going through a lot of old grants, a lot of kind of older grants and kind of seeing where those lines still are. So my guess would be that it would be, possibly somewhere in there, or, in the case of the construction grant, and again, I don't have this right in front of me, but due to Amanda's.
So Mark is trying to raise his hand. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
great.
And Mark, I can't hear you. Oh, no, something's wrong with your sound. If you type it in, sorry. Oh, this is good.
Sorry
Awesome.
about that. My mic went out in a different Zoom and I thought it was fixed, but I guess not. That, if you remember last year, when the state cut us 20%,
Yes.
and when they gave us the money, that money
Ah.
came in this year. So it's now a part, so that's the extra 20%. So the
Okay.
20% that was cut last year, but then redistributed to us is now in the budget for this year. Because we
Thank
were
you.
20% under last year.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thanks for running. That
No
was
problem.
impressive.
Thank you.
Any other questions about the budget? I'm pulling these up in not any particular order, but there is an operations report from Becky, which goes through security and facilities, and then a little bit of information about training and meetings that she's gone to. And my question for Becky or for Christian is, in terms of security incidents, which ones are the most critical? Because I'm assuming that they're not all really equal. So which ones are the most critical for the library in terms of something? Impact, hassle?
Any that involve violence, or there is a checkbox on the incident report form where if it was violence either towards another patron or a staff member, or even verbal abuse of staff, those kind of things. So we kind of rank it that way. If anybody was hurt, that's kind of the worst.
I hate to ask this, but there's a category sexual. What does that mean?
So that would be anything involving like porn on the computers or things where that was a component where, maybe it was harassing between somebody who was stalking or that kind of thing.
Anything
It's
else? for
really an
Becky?
open-ended thing, Ed, for any time there's a sexual component to the behavior, right? So porn in the library, harassment, fortunately, we haven't had exposure issues here, but that would fall under that. That kind of thing.
So if it was a physical thing, it would be show up somewhere else, right? Like
Well,
somebody
if it's a
tried to,
physical thing, if I'm pushing you out of the way to get to a book that I want on the shelf, that would be a physical thing. If I
Right,
grab
but
you
I
on the
meant
butt on the way,
physical
then it's
regarding-
now a sexual thing.
okay.
And some of them do check multiple boxes.
Yeah, they're not exclusionary, they're as well as.
Anything else on that one?
Just quickly, in terms of use of the library, I don't need exact counts, but just in terms of flow of people coming in and out, is it increased, similar, decreased to the last few months?
It's on a steady increase, Sam, from the best I can tell. I don't have our stat numbers right in front of us, and I think gate counters are pretty notoriously unreliable, but I've been out in the branches. I think I've been to every branch a couple of times this month, and there's been, there's bodies, there's people, there's people in there, and we certainly are seeing it here at Central. There's a lot more action, not as much action as I'd like in the children's room, of course, but that was a problem before the pandemic as well.
Thanks.
We're getting there, though. It's nice to see the people.
It'd be interesting to see 2021 versus 2019. I know industries have been looking back 2 years for the last normal year to see if we're better or worse than 2019. That might be something for end of the year report in January in terms of circulation and head count. The Renee Batel's report for Central notes that Central had 3,766 visitors in November. That is 164 visitors per day, which either sounds impressive or sounds high or sounds low, depending on your point of view. But
I'm
good
impressed
to
with the math. Was that like real-time math there, Jill?
no, that was not real
Oh,
time
okay.
math. But I believe there was 23 open days in November. So again, a good number, and hopefully a very positive number for the Central branch. So there is a report for Central, which gives statistics and a couple other information about things happening, including a film or something that was filmed at Central Library up on the 3rd floor. Their branch highlights is another report that's from Dawn. So branch activities, talking about hires. And then some information on the third and fourth page, excerpts from branch reports. So stories that the branch have provided to us. Congratulations to Amanda Perrine. Amanda, I had you in class. You're one of
It's
my
Perrine.
many Amandas.
Thank you.
So congratulations to Amanda Perrine, who is one of the 40 under 40. So congratulations. I'll note that we've hired a number of people this year, and I look forward to hearing more about who we've hired and the roles that they have filled. Be interesting to see kind of a little bit more information. I think it would make all of us feel good in terms of staffing the libraries. Only one other report that I printed, and that is from Amanda Shavoli. Amanda does member services, so she interacts with the member libraries, the suburban libraries, and so information on delivery and sorting, some outreach highlights, information on training projects. And so in terms of sorting and delivery, it looks like things are going well. And for delivery, I wondered why the East Syracuse delivery is slow. And I don't know, Christian or Amanda, seemed like their delivery days were like 9 days in transit.
Oh, for that one, we put a little notation. They were closed for COVID. I would try to make sure you had some notations in there for when it
sorry.
was shorter. But just to comment on delivery as a whole, things have been flying through, and we're back up to pretty close to pre-COVID transit times. We were going to have it probably a little bit lower, but we had some staff absences and some libraries closed. So I'm thinking by next month, fingers crossed, it'll be down to maybe 3 days.
And what's the billboard campaign?
That's part of the final year of the Family Literacy Library Services aid, and we're supposed to be doing a billboard every year as part of that. We didn't do one last year because we weren't welcoming people into the library. We were mostly doing everything digitally. So this year we're going to be doing our final run of that, and I'm working on getting out some contest rules to the members and hopefully engaging everybody in our system.
Thank you.
Can I just ask quickly about the transit report? I know we kind of gone back and forth on like, what does good look like? And these numbers do seem generally very similar to, I think, even what things look like pre-COVID, to your point, you know, maybe like half a day on average difference or something. Is there any, so I guess the first question is there anything in the MOU that dictates what transit should look like? And then if not, or I guess if so, do we have like a goal? I know you just said 3 days. Like, is that something that we're stating, or is that just hope?
No, Sam, the thing is transit is extremely flexible and has been extremely flexible. It's been a real problem for us and a big drain on our organization. It's also been a big strain for our relationship with the members. And I think that the fact that we're doing pretty well on it is making a big difference for how our members are seeing us. We very specifically did not write a turnaround time into the MOU very consciously, because you never know what's going to happen. I mean, Jesse got COVID, and that's going to slow things down for a couple of weeks. It's going to throw a wrench into the works. The idea of 1 day transit, I don't think that's realistic. I think a lot of people talk about that. I don't think it's realistic. I don't think it's a real expectation. 3 days I think is great. 5 days is great. Personally, less than a week in transit I think is pretty great. That's my experience. I've worked in a lot of libraries, including ones that are bigger and ones that are smaller, and a week is pretty much, industry and standard in a lot of areas. So, tightening it up to 3 days, I think is great. I think if we were able to lock it in on that, that would be wonderful. Getting it to 1 day service, I just don't see that being viable without having to put a lot of strictures in place for our members. That would make it hard for them. As I say, anything under 5 days and under, I think is pretty solid myself, based on my experience. Now, I of course, people would want better. We always want better. But in my experience, a 3 to 5 day flip is pretty solid for where a lot of people are doing them in systems of our size.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I 5 days is the goal. Then if we're at 4, that's awesome, and we should be celebrating it. So I think that's the purpose of the conversation. And then if that's something that we can, sort of say with some declaration around it to everybody, I think that's great. So to me, it seems like something to celebrate.
Yeah, thank you. I think so too. A lot of work went into this and a lot of people have worked very hard to get us here. So thank you for that. And I appreciate you recognizing it.
I think the one good thing after the MOU is that there are a number of committees being formed to talk about all the different things that the system does and to work on maybe recommendations or whatever. And I'm sure that there's probably a committee somewhere now that will be thinking about transit and on a more regular basis as a group to talk about goals and whatever else. So, you know, some of the things that we worry about, I think now the committees, these various committees that are bubbling up will worry about. And that's really what I wanted to say. Not that things will change with transit, but that the things that we worry about, there are now committees that will be involved. And Amanda Schiavoli, I know, is working on that along with Alyssa and others. And I think that's something that we'll hear more about next year. In terms of reports, are there any other questions that people have about reports? I know I asked a ton of questions. Hearing none. Something I didn't ask up front is if there are any other additions to the agenda, and I should have asked that.
I'm going to make a motion to go into executive session at the end.
Okay. Are there any other additions? So two things that we've been trying to do more discussion in these meetings. And the one thing that bubbled up last month was about the defense of intellectual freedom. And so I think, I'm not sure who's going to lead this discussion, if it's Christian or someone else, but we know that this is important and that various organizations have taken a stand on this. So Christian, over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jill. I appreciate that. Intellectual freedom is a huge standard for public libraries and public librarians. We take it very, very seriously. And the idea behind it is, you know, it's really kind of the beauty of the beast. You can come in, you can ask me, you know, about Flopsy Mopsy for your kid. You can ask me about, you know, how to do Windows 7 for seniors for your mom, but you can also come in and can ask me for a book about, you know, how to recover from addiction or how to divorce your abusive spouse or, you know, how to read things that you don't want people in church to read. And our focus on privacy and our focus on intellectual freedom is a huge part of what makes the modern public library a public library. Now, part of that is to have voices that are representative of everyone in our society, regardless of whether or not those are offensive to people or not. There's a really great line that's going around right now, which is that a good library has something in it to offend everyone. And I agree with that. There are certainly things that are in my library that I find offensive, and I will fight you to keep them on the shelf because I think it's important that they're there. What we have been seeing, and I sent you folks a document earlier in the month that goes through a lot of this, is what we're seeing are more aggressive challenges that are going in a slightly different direction. Now, most of your intellectual freedom challenges, most of your banning challenges, as it were, are going to be, you know, typically take place in school libraries. And the reason behind that is, you know, my kid is in class. I don't want my kid reading The Bluest Eye. If my kid doesn't read The Bluest Eye, they will get an F. They will not get into Harvard. Their life will be impacted because you made them read something I didn't want them to read, okay? It doesn't happen as much in libraries because it's like, I didn't make your kid read anything. Your kid came in, pulled something off the shelf that was on them. The browsability becomes an issue for us then. The idea that people do have this space of discovery can become an issue for us. But again, we stand pretty firm with these things and that these things have merit and that the materials on the shelf have merit and purpose and are part of a larger collection, a larger scope of intellectual materials that makes up our society. And as such, we feel quite strongly that they need to stay there. So why we're having this conversation is that there's been a pretty aggressive movement to get materials pulled off shelves, largely in school libraries, but there has been some movement to do it in public libraries, and some public libraries have been challenged. There's been some weird state legislature stuff, not in our state, but in some other states, that is quite concerning. We've seen the focus of the challenges change. So where before we were seeing, you know, particularly GLBTQ materials that applied to children, then it was trans material, then it was trans material with, you know, written for children, and now it's materials that may be part of kind of making up some of the racial equity and some of the critical race theory stuff that we're discussing. And so there's been some knee jerk that way. And these are the kinds of challenges that we're seeing more. But what's concerning is that the challenges are also, they exist on Facebook and they can very easily transmorgify. You really can kind of get an entire challenge in a package now. You just go to a website, you know, you go to a Facebook page. There's a really crazy one out of Salt Lake City, Utah. You go there and they'll give you the whole campaign for you to immediately launch off locally. So that's where some of these things are disruptive, is that there seems to be, you know, what used to be kind of a regional place by place thing is starting to be seen as a larger national movement, and libraries are becoming more of a factor in kind of the larger national culture wars. Which is just kind of a brief rundown. We haven't had any challenges. We haven't had any questions. We haven't had any pushback. You know, we have just about all the materials that people are challenging on the shelves, which I'm very appreciative of. But we have not, this is preparation work. We have not had a challenge as yet. Ed, what's your question? What's up?
Well, it's not a question. I want to speak after you.
Okay. So that's kind of where we're at. There are some statements that are out there that are statements of intellectual freedom. I think these are really powerful. They're useful. NYLA has one. ALA has one. In my opinion, it's great that these things exist in the professional organizations, because they don't actually have a collection that they have to worry about, and they don't actually have staff that have to kind of take this abuse. My preference would be that we not really link to those things per se, and that our actions speak louder than words. Challenges are unpleasant for staff. I have been on the receiving end of some vitriol around these things. They are uniformly unpleasant for staff. So I would like to kind of fly below the radar and have our stuff in place, have all of our preparations in place if we do get a challenge, but not really bell the tiger by putting something out there saying kind of, you know, we dare you to challenge us, as it were.
Ed?
Okay, I don't disagree. And I think there's a great sentence I want to read in the NYLA statement, which is so pertinent. And I'm not saying we should pass on it based on what you said, but it says, parents have the right to set restrictions for their own children, but no person or group has the right to deny access to all readers. This principle applies equally to the free access of information in other types of libraries as well. And I think that's a great place to be if we have to pass something. But I always think about censorship and the books that have been banned. And my favorite one is, and I wish I could find the article that I had clipped. A number of years ago, there was an article about a book called Making It with Mademoiselle that had been banned or was being asked to be pulled, and it turned out to be a sewing instruction book. So, I mean, a lot of that is absurd because people are judging a book by its cover, you might say. So, but anyway, I guess it might be wise not to look like we're flaunting something and hold off. But if we have to pass something, I think the NYLA statement's a very good one.
Yeah, I would also support saying let's give support to the NYLA statement. I think it's important for us to have a viewpoint on this. And so while I appreciate the challenges that it may or may not bring on, this is like a core tenet of what libraries serve for. And I mean, we're talking about it right now, so it's in the public record to begin with. And so if we're going to talk about it and not take a stance on it, I feel like it has that says something too. So I would favor, kind of signing on to what a state level agency or state level organization is saying, and, saying we agree, like people should have access to information freely, and there shouldn't really be a question about that.
I wonder, so first of all, I appreciate that the library has a collection development policy that follows. It has a form that people can submit to challenge something, and a process for how challenges go through the library, perhaps even end up at the board for review. And I understand that having something challenged is hard on staff. I also am concerned about how we show support for our community, and how we should show support for LGBTQ members of our staff. And that by supporting the NYLA statement or some other statement, where it says something to staff in terms of in terms of our care for them, our support for them, and support for the materials that speak to them, as well as showing support for materials that speak to members of our community who may feel marginalized.
I don't want to do a point counterpoint. I would just again go back to my experience as someone who has been on the receiving end of these challenges. I have been there in the rooms when these things were happening, and on one of them I was sitting and defending a GLBTQ display that we had, and a patron was very angry and told me that I was the son of Satan and I was the spawn of this, and had a lot of things to say about my parents and how they'd raised me. And of course, I had to just stand there and listen to them, talk them down, get them to kind of settle themselves down. And the whole time that they're talking to me, there are gay kids in the room. And they're not hearing that I stood up for them. They're hearing that this person hates their existence so much that he doesn't even want books about them. I feel that we are standing up for people of diverse backgrounds and people who are not represented by having their literature on the shelves. We have every book that's, on all the lists of all the books that are being challenged. We've got them all. They're all in circulation. I'm really proud of that. And so I guess my thing is that with us having the understanding that we do stand, for those things, and that our staff stand for those things, I guess I just don't know what we would be doing by saying, hey, we stand for this stuff. And I maybe I'm wrong. I don't know of a lot of people that are really chiming in and putting these statements on their web pages per se. I don't, I think it's largely just kind of, we speak where we stand. And that's kind of where I would go. And I just, again, I would caution you folks, it's a very easy click to go from we the library believe in this to, well, what kind of books are being banned? Oh my gosh, it's a comic book about trans people. Well, we can't have that in the library. And it's just a very easy thing that maybe we wouldn't have introduced that thought into people's heads if we hadn't put that out there. And that to me, I've spoken to staff are not super comfortable kind of having this out there, as it were, because I think people do feel that it may kind of challenge people to do this, and that's kind of where I guess we're coming from. But of course, I obviously we stand for intellectual freedom. We're living that every day.
So we could support the NYLA statement, for example, and not publish that on our website that we support, but it would be in our minutes, which would be, and staff would know. So I think there are different ways of doing this. But I would actually like to hear from more board members about this. Lenore, Maria, Babette.
I'm here. I just have my granddaughter, so I'm just.
Sorry, I'm speechless. I'd march the guy out of the building, actually. Security. I think you have to have everything in the library. You can't discriminate. People have to know everything.
Mhm. Yeah, and that kind of includes his right to yell at me, which is challenging.
No,
But
I
you know,
don't
that
agree
was a
with that
different
at all.
time, you know, and that was a different time. That was a different expectation. You know, I mean, I also go, these things just get ugly, you know. I mean, I was written up, my group was written up because we did story time at a protest against family separations at the border, and then it got picked up by The Hill. And in the comment section, you know, people were calling for my daughter to be taken away from me. You know, a lot of people were. And so this is the kind of vitriol that I just really don't want to invite. You know, I don't see where we need to do it when we're already walking the walk. If you know, hey, Jill, if you say that within the context of these minutes, you want to support the NILA statement, I'm 100% in favor of that. I can bring it up for you. Same with the same with the ALA statement. And if we want to, you know, have a resolution for ourselves that we support that, that would be great. I just don't want to bell the tiger by putting something out there on social media. That's really where I'm coming from. So as somebody who's kind of gotten a little bit of experience of this stuff myself.
I will move the NILA statement with the proviso that, you know, we're not going to flaunt it. It's going to be there. Staff's going to know that we're behind it, and librarians are, you know, and public will know if they care enough. So why don't we, I'll put the motion on the table.
That the OCPL Board of Trustees
Supports the
Endorsed.
NILA statement, which I read in part. It's a few more paragraphs and it'll take a while to read, but it's.
I think Maria has her hand up.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Do you think we can include it in our like mission, our goals and our mission statements as like one of our, you know, what are the things that we are going to adhere to? Would that be a proper place to put it?
Yes, I think so. Absolutely. You know, a bigger thing, Maria, is that we actually in our collection development policy adhere to the Library Bill of Rights. And I think that was really an incredibly smart choice, because from that, because there are updates on the Library Bill of Rights constantly and new interpretations and new kind of, you know, understandings of these things that come down, having this document tied to that is incredibly powerful. I've sent you the ALA statement, I've sent you the NILA statement, which are in the chat. And I can also go to the ALA Library Bill of Rights, which is directly tied in some of our policies and that kind of stuff as well.
So I
mean-
believe, oh, go ahead, Maria.
I mean, you can also post it on our website, on the public library website, a little statement if you wanted to. I don't know if that is something that you'd like to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have lots of resources on digital resources, lots of resources for, you know, the system and system administration. I would certainly be happy to have it there. And I'm just looking to see where this would actually be covered in our mission.
Jill, is there a second?
So Ed has moved
Second.
that the OCPL board support the NILA position statement on the defense of intellectual freedom. And I heard Sam just second it. I think we probably don't need more discussion. And so I'm going to
I will
call
just
for,
add, though, we can work on the implementation of where it shows up. But I think it's a good thing to say we support this.
okay. I'm going to do roll call for voting. So Ed,
Yes.
Etta,
No.
Lenore,
Yes.
Christina,
Yeah.
Sam,
Yes.
Babette,
Yes.
Maria,
Yes.
Tim.
Yes.
I'm also a yes, and so that is, I think that's 8-1, and the motion passes. Thank you. I want to keep us moving so we don't run out of time. I know that Amanda Perrine is going to talk about her work at Sewell. And so I
Yes,
will turn it over to
hello.
her. Hi.
Thank you so much for having me speak today. I wanted to tell you a little bit about me first. So I've been the manager at Sewell for nearly a year now. I originally came to OCPL City as the Betts branch manager on March 30th, 2020. So I started here from my couch. And I was the Maxwell director prior to that. I am super active in the community as, among other things, president of the Junior League, secretary and NYLA council rep for NYLA's leadership and management section. And I'm the library chair for the Western New York Genealogical Society. And I live in the city. I live in Eastwood with my husband and my 8-year-old. So Christian asked me to talk about what being a branch manager is like and what I'm working to accomplish here. So first and foremost, being a branch manager is all about my staff and my patrons. Nearly everything I do revolves around them. So last week we had our quarterly staff meeting and training, and I'm going to, as quickly as possible, go through what we covered there to show what I focus on here at Sewell. So we started with some team building. Then we had Amy Thorna come speak on her role at OCPL and what she can do to help us at Sewell. My staff were not aware of Amy at all, so they didn't know about the GED courses we offer, the conversation groups. So they're really excited to start sharing those things with our patrons. And then we worked on goal setting and strategy for the library, followed by individual goal setting. And the individual goals are confidential between the staff and myself, the staff member directly and myself. So the goals were set in areas that I consider the most important at a branch: programming and marketing, collections, building and grounds, patron experience and outreach, and professional development. So as you all know, this has been a really interesting time for programming. I've been involved in 2 virtual programs since April of 2020, a book discussion group, which is actually happening tonight, and a genealogy program, which I co-run with Celeste Moore of Payne Branch. And Dawn told me is the most successful of the city's virtual programs. So on average, we have 25 to 30 attendees at each of those. And we're looking forward to expanding in the new year to also include some virtual workshops by demand. My new youth services librarian is doing some fantastic in-person craft programs where she has the patrons register for a time slot so that we don't get overwhelmed by all the families at once. So on Saturday, she had 28 people over the course of the day come in, create and decorate gingerbread houses. And we also do passive programs, which are programs where patrons can take part just during a regular visit without having a staff member right there leading it. One of the things we just finished up was making cards for senior citizens for the holidays. And Senator Rachel May actually showed up this weekend to participate in that. So she made some cards that we sent out. We're marketing as much as we can in both the common ways, such as Facebook and signs, but also just through any other method that we can come up with. So for example, I've been giving genealogical lectures at some of the member libraries, and I always make sure to mention the library program here for OCPL for Sewell and Payne and tell people that they can come join in that. For the Strawberry Social this summer, I wrote an article for the Post Standard and we had really great turnout. So we're looking to expand into that. This area is really undergoing constant change due to the changes in the communications department that Christian mentioned. And so we just continue trying to find new ways to reach patrons as much as possible. So the library collection is obviously one of the key things that we do both in person and online. My staff have spent the past 6 months weeding, which was very overdue, and it has had amazing results. So the shelves now, instead of being jam-packed, are browsable. We had a lot of just extraneous freestanding shelving that they had to keep adding because we had a lot of old things that weren't really moving. And so we've gotten rid of a lot of that now that we've weeded. So the library is a lot more open. It's a lot easier to get around. And we've been working with Katie and her collection development team to bring in new materials that our community wants. So the library is looking really great right now. We have a fantastic maintenance person who we work with. He cleans, he fixes everything. He constantly is changing the light bulbs that go out. So that's been great for the building. We also work with Becky for security. She is always here to bounce ideas off in relation to incidents that we have and how to handle them. And we have a fabulous CET member who's here most days of the week. One thing that I include in buildings and grounds is our displays. And I have some staff members who are so talented in relation to this. My page, Evan, creates these displays that you have to see to believe. It's magic what he can create out of a particle board and some paint. My LA always does lovely window displays, and I have some other staff who I think started getting jealous. So now they're making book displays as well in different nooks of the library that patrons love to come in and see and check books out from. And in my opinion, it makes our library just much more personalized. So you really want to come in here and see what's happening. It's not just, you know, that boring old place. There's really cool stuff going on. And all of this combines into patron experience and outreach. So customer service management is my specialty. I've been in customer service management for almost half of my life now, and I've lectured about that at libraries and at conferences around the country. And making sure that our patrons have the best experience possible is my goal and that of my staff. And you can see that in just how amazing they are with patrons. They help with technology issues and job applications and just all kinds of general reference questions. In fact, just yesterday, I received a thank you note from a patron that my LA worked with because he had no computer skills and he wanted to apply for a job at Taco Bell, and they only accept online applications now. So she helped him fill out that application so that he can hopefully get the job that he needs. We also have a community puzzle, which is really popular, and a beautiful reading room where patrons study and play board games and host ESL tutoring and all kinds of things. So obviously right now outreach has been harder, but we continue to make connections, and we've come up with ideas for once we're allowed in some of these buildings, such as the school and whatnot, where we can work with patrons where they actually are instead of just expecting them to wander in here. So customer service management might be my specialty, but my passion is staff development and finding ways within their jobs that they can build the skills they need and work towards their goals is my favorite part of the job. And I would argue the most important part of my job as well. Having a thriving staff, which I do through monthly one-on-ones, just consistent conversations here while we're all at work. I praise as much as possible, and I try to correct issues early on so that they don't develop into bigger problems, is really what leads us to having those great patron interactions and experiences. So I know that, you know, we can't afford to just send everyone to a PLA conference or even to a NYLA conference, but we're constantly sharing webinars. Amanda S. always sends out a great email with lots of training opportunities. I've really been pushing the Ryan Dowd trainings, which are just about so much more than homeless patrons. And I try to get people to join in on the OCPL and CLRC meetings that make sense for their position. So in closing, my staff are amazing. They really work hard to make Sewell an integral part of the community, and working with them is a tremendous privilege in my professional career. If you haven't visited Sewell, I'd love for you to stop by. I can show you around. The city branches are vibrant, fascinating, community-focused libraries, and I really cannot tell you how much I appreciate being asked to talk to you all about them. So thank you so much, and I'm happy to answer questions if you have time. I know it's a little over.
Ed?
Yes, thank you. First of all, I greatly, I'm sure, and the board greatly appreciate the enthusiasm you just demonstrated. I want to tell one very, very quick story about you to the board for new people. When I remember a couple of years ago, several years ago, when you were head of Maxwell Library, I attended your holiday party. So the library was closed that day. And a young woman, teenage girl, let's say, came in and went to the bookshelves, and she had a great stack of books, probably half a dozen. She started going to the checkout, and somebody said, "Oh, the library's closed." And you should have seen the sad look on her face. And Amanda said, "We are closed, but I'll take care of you over here." And she checked her out. And this poor kid, you made her weekend. And I was, that gets to your, what did you call it? Customer service mentality. So I just wanted the new board members to know how enthusiastic you are about your job, and we appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Ed.
Amanda, thank you. Any other questions for Amanda?
Thank you.
Okay. So we do have some resolutions to attend to. The first resolution, 2138, is
Election of officers.
Election of officers.
I will move it.
Of course you will, Ed. Do I hear a second? Someone has a second. Babette, thank you.
Actually, nominations don't need a second, but I move that I call the question unless there are any other write-in candidates.
Any write-in candidates? Anybody else want to run for president?
No way.
Okay, so by voice vote, Ed,
Yes.
Etta,
Yes.
Lenore,
Yes.
Christina?
Yeah.
Sam,
Yes.
Babette,
Yes.
Maria,
Yes.
Tim? Tim?
He's muted. Oh,
He looks frozen. I think he's frozen. Okay, and I'm also a yes. Thank you. Motion passes.
congratulations.
Resolution 2139 are expenditures from unrestricted board designated funds.
Jill, I would like to propose an amendment to that resolution on line 8 regarding the Ossie Golden Award. I think originally I misinterpreted the amount, but I offered a resolution, I think it was in June, that we pay $500 instead of $400. And I'm suggesting that we've been paying $400 since 1979. And since we have sufficient funds, more than adequate funds to be able to raise it by $100 per year, we only award one a year. I'm suggesting that this amendment be amended to raise that amount. It would read, it says 600 which means 400 for the award, 200 for the reception. I'm suggesting that it reads 700, so it would be 500 for the award and 200 for the reception.
Okay. Any other changes, proposed changes? So someone
I would
want
move the
to-
motion as amended if you'd like.
Second.
Second. So under discussion, I just want to note that the $600 for the Library Trustees Association will allow all trustees on the OCPL board to be members of that group and to receive their newsletter. And I believe there's some other benefits. So I don't know that we've done that in the past, so that all board members really are members of LTA, but that is what we get for that $600. There are some things here that we've always do. We always do the Cathedral Square. We always do Nikon. We always do Center State. And one of the questions I asked Christian is whether these are, if we get our value for these things. And I don't know, Christian, if you have any comments on the value of these memberships.
Yeah, I mean, Jill, I was able to review it. I think that a lot of the things, you know, the Center State CEO, you know, NYLA, LTA, you know, the Nikon, New York Council of NFPs. I think there's a lot of resources in here, you know, I think they give us a lot of resources, and it's not a large expenditure to support the not-for-profit infrastructure of the state. So I think it's worthwhile. You know, I'm certainly going to be spending more time in the Nikon. I think there's a lot of really great info there in there, and I'd like to see what I can get out of that. So I currently think it's all pretty great. I mean, I'm probably going to have to come back to you folks to ask for a little bit more for Staff Development Day, because we've got $750, and with over 100 people, that doesn't go very far. I'd like to get us some really good speakers. I'd like to get some stuff there, but I can go back to you and ask that at the time. And just ask for an addendum when I have a more fleshed out budget and a better idea of what we're looking at.
Someone want to call the question?
I'll call it.
Thank you, Ed. Okay, Ed,
Yes.
Etta,
Yes.
Lenore,
Yes.
Christina,
Yes.
Sam,
Yes.
Babette,
Yes.
Maria,
Yes.
Tim.
Yes.
Hi, Tim. I'm
Hey.
also a yes, so that motion passes. Thank you. The last resolution, which is a grant application for CLRC's initiative grant up to $1,500. We did receive a copy of that grant application. There's some details. Well, we did receive that grant application. Anyone want to move that one?
I'll move it. Oh, sorry. Let somebody else.
That was Christina,
that
I
was.
believe.
Yep.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Christian, do you know what the goal is for that grant in terms of number of teams served?
Hold on a second, I have it here in front of me. The goal is to circulate about at least 200 kits over the course of the year, which would be, you know, I mean, it's going to kind of change depending on different ones. The idea is that the service will need at least 1 or 2 cycles to catch on, and then kind of build out from there. So we're hoping, you know, maybe 100 kids a month or something like that would be
Okay,
pretty useful.
okay, thank you. Any other questions about the grant?
No.
Can we call the question? Ed,
Yes.
Etta,
Yes.
Lenore,
Yes.
Christina?
Yeah.
Sam,
Yes.
Maria,
Yes. Yes.
and Tim.
Yes.
And Babette?
Babette,
Yes.
That was a quiz, Babette.
I know. Apple skate.
Okay, I have to see, I'm missing. Sorry, I need to add one more person to. There we go. Okay. Sam, do you want to make a motion to move us into executive session?
Yes, be it resolved that per section 105 of the Public Officers Law, this board shall now move into executive session for purpose of discussing the employment history of a particular person.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Tim,
Tim.
thank you. We have to vote to go into executive session. So Ed,
Yes.
Etta,
Yes.
Lenore? Lenore? Don't hear her. Christina?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I heard Lenore. Christina
Yeah.
said yes. Sam?
Yes.
Babette?
Yes.
Maria?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
I'm also yes. So I'm putting the board into a breakout room. And then I will join you once the room is open.
Okay. Okay.
Sorry. The time is 5:54. We have left executive session. Ed moved that we leave executive session. Babette seconded. The board took no action. Is there anything else that we need to discuss before we end this meeting?
No, just that everybody has a happy holiday.
Thank you.
Happy holidays. I move to adjourn.
Second.
That
I
would be
third.
Ed
Oh.
and Tim.
Happy holidays,
All-
everyone.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Bye.
Thank you, Gail.
Have a good holiday. Thanks,
Enjoy your
Gail.
holidays, everyone.
Bye, guys.
Everyone.
Aye.
Yeah, I'm coming for Christmas
Bye.
cookies.
All right. You let me
Okay.
know. They'll be there.
Okay.